What must we do differently to serve our needs?
Sometimes I wonder, don't they think about the influence that they have? Because the way some statements are just made carelessly.
Only a tenant in that state house building or in any other lodge. So you cannot make decisions, permanent decisions, while you are there.
Why are we voting in people who seem not to really care about us?
Why is it that we feel, isolated? We the people, our powers that we have donated to you as a member of parliament, as a senator, as all that, you are misusing our powers.
We are still making popular people who violated the law, people who do not respect human rights, people who have absolutely no regard for the people of Kenya.
Since last year, there's been this feeling of, I don't know whether it is hopelessness.
If you're not thinking of running for office, then you need to start thinking about who are you going to support to run for office and actually win. And it has to be somebody who has a good track record.
It is our duty, it's a responsibility for us to make sure that we are putting the right people in these seats. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Journey and Fields podcast. My name is Mwende.
And my name is Stella, and we're so excited that you could join us again. On today's episode, we are joined by our very, very first guest, and I will let her introduce herself and tell us just a bit about what she does, what drives you, and why you're part of this growing community since you've been cheering us on.
All right, thanks Stella, and thanks to everyone watching. My name is Lilian Mushoki, and I'm a lot of things. I'm a feminist, I'm a women's rights advocate with a background in sexual and reproductive health. I'm also a co-founder at Sauti ya Jamii program, which is an NGO based in Kenya. And above all, I want to say that I'm a patriotic Kenyan. And I say this because there's a lot happening in our country. Right. And I feel like I should fully participate in making Kenya a better place. And I'm really excited at, the efforts, the mandamanos. I mean, I'm happy at that because it means that there's a lot of awareness that is happening in Kenya at the moment. And I'm happy to be part of this process. I'm really excited for the both of you. Because I know this has been a long time coming. And the fact that we are now here today having this conversation, moving this forward and, being part of the broader conversations of things happening in Kenya and globally, it's really wonderful. Right. And I look forward to having these conversations with you.
Thank you. And we are honored to have you. And you've sort of started us off by mentioning things about the civic space and why we all really must participate. But before that, I think we can do a quick check-in on how are you really? I like that question because it's so different from how are you doing? Yeah, how are you really? And I can start us off. It's not one thing. I can't say that I am well in one thing and then, I'm not generally well, but I would say I am grateful that I am okay and I am full of gratitude because of this space and how it's growing in such a fast rate. Actually, it's exceeded our expectations. So that's something that's actually keeping me going, which is great. But on the other hand, so concerned about what's happening in the country. And mostly because one life is too many to be lost. Just thinking about the future of this country. And I know that we tell young people that, you're not just the future, you're the present. But literally, killing young people is taking away a generational future that we can never, ever account for. Because really, we are not accounting for how we are losing lives. So that's how I am. How are you ladies doing?
Oh, wow. Okay. I feel like I also have very mixed emotions. Today, I'm very happy. Excited. I feel like that's my word. We said that we will play a game for our viewers. Every time I use the word excited, I don't know, clap or something, or do 5 squats if you're trying to keep healthy. But I generally am excited and very hopeful. But the more that I continue to think about things, I worry in some ways. But for me, as Mwende, as a being, as an entity, I'm happy, I'm doing well, and I feel so good, so proud of myself, just given some of these things that we are currently doing. And even when we've all sat here and we were told, the cameras are now rolling, let's start. I was just so happy because I feel like the three of us have hung out so many times before. And now to do this in a very different perspective, I'm just so keen and excited to just see what this conversation will be. And, in as much as I know that the conversations that we are going to have, in some ways, they're hopeful, but they're also it's like you can wallow in that mud. But either way, I'm excited because I know that we shall talk about things that really can propel Kenya forward. And I'm curious to hear what hopes we have for our nation.
Yeah. How are you, Lillian?
Oh, in Kenya, every time someone asks you, how are you? We are used to saying, I'm fine. And that's it. It's concluded. Yeah. But then hearing you ask this question gives me a moment of reflection onto what has really been happening. And I feel like since last year, there's been this feeling of, I don't know whether it is hopelessness, but also a feeling of optimism, seeing that, people are ready to fight for what our country is. Yeah. So how am I? Well, I would say I feel blessed that I'm here in this space. I feel blessed that I'm part of different processes, personal and also, community-based processes where we can actually have these conversations. But beyond that, I feel optimistic.
So important.
About our country, about the future, and especially about the younger generation. The voices that are they've demonstrated that, we are ready to put our voices out there. We are ready to speak for ourselves. We are ready to articulate what our needs are. And that is awesome. Yeah. But also I'm having this awareness every day that in speaking out, any of us can be a victim of the hostility that is happening. Yeah. So in a way, I feel that I'm blessed to still be part of this process, to wake up every day and, continue in this process. And hopefully things are going to get better. I am hopeful.
Yeah. As long as we're talking about it, it definitely makes things get better, one conversation at a time. And I keep saying that the worst thing is to never try. The worst thing is to give up and say, you know what, we are done. We are done fighting or pushing for better. So yeah, we keep going. Yeah.
And when you've talked about answering the question, how are you? I think maybe that might also be a cultural thing because we've been very accustomed to
saying that
outside things, to the people looking in, they need to see that things look perfect. So it's very rare that someone, when you ask them how they're doing, that they'll start saying, oh, I have a headache. They'll just say, I'm fine, I'm good. Just because I think that has just been how we've been socialized. But I guess the world is continuing to change. People are being more open with sharing their feelings, but also people are recognizing that people are recognizing or really naming their experiences and the feelings that they have. So it's easier to be able to communicate that, actually, today I'm not okay, but in the essence of things, I'm alive, I'm kicking, I'm healthy, so I'm good. But things could be better. Yeah. Okay. So we've already alluded to what this episode is about today. We shall be discussing current affairs, basically. So we shall talk about some of the things that have been happening in the past few days, past few weeks, and we really don't even have a script. We shall just have a conversation and keep going and see all the things that come up for us that we are interested in discussing. I will hand over first to Stella. And Stella, I'm just curious because we've sort of had these discussions off camera. How are you feeling with how things are going? We've just come from Maandamano, and we know, Sabasaba is coming up next week, and people are still talking about some form of civil action. So generally, what's your opinion? How are you seeing things? And really, what are you thinking about when it comes to that?
So the first thing on my mind is how this is such a defining moment for our country. The fact that people keep showing up in the streets, pushing for better, calling out impunity, calling out bad governance is so important. And yes, it's a defining moment. At the same time, I'm done seeing young people die and there's no accountability at all. But I'm also very concerned about the trajectory of the conversations we're having about our country and governance and the kind of leaders that we would like. pretty much most conversations about alternatives now seem to be inclined towards former leaders in government, and we are sort of going down the route of, we think that people who have actually been in this broken system can provide us with solutions. And we know that that's impossible. It's impossible that you violated the law at some point when you're serving in public office, and you now seem to be lying and telling the public that you're actually the solution. But in all this, we must remind ourselves that there's a role that citizens play, because the current regime is not in power because it voted for itself. Kenyans actually lined up and made the decision to support. And I know that it's debatable in so many ways, but the truth is, in winning, there has to be majority margins. And the truth is, they were popular during that time. And so my biggest concern is that we are not critically thinking about alternatives and the kind of Kenya that we want. We are still making popular people who violated the law, people who do not respect human rights, people who have absolutely no regard for the people of Kenya. And then we want to then think that things can get better. So that's my biggest concern. And my quick appeal to young people is that if you're not critically thinking about the person you would like to lead you, or the person, if you're not thinking of running for office, then you need to start thinking about who are you going to support to run for office and actually win. And it has to be somebody who has a good track record. If you think that voting in somebody who has definitely shown that they have disregard for the rule of law, then you're not providing a solution for this country. And yeah, I'd rather we even maybe pause and think about what we want than keep going and listening to people who have no solutions for the country than what we are doing now, popularizing people who don't really think a lot about Kenya, thinking about themselves, and using young people for, what do we call it? We're just trending for the wrong reasons, but there's no solution that you're providing for the country. And there's so much as well to talk about male-dominated politics. And people asking, where are women? Well, women do not want to engage in violence or in violent processes. And so there are barriers to it. So yeah, there's so much that we need to talk about, especially about deliberate choices that we have for the country, not just voting for anyone.
Yeah. And anytime there is war, unrest, anything negative that is happening, the people that are harmed first are women and children. Yeah. So naturally, that's why people would want to protect themselves in such instances. But then that goes to show there is already an existing problem, because even sometimes when we judge women who are in leadership, the stool is not the same for them. It's all not the height of this table. So some of them are starting with less just because even they might not have had as equal resources as other peers or competitors to really have stood a good chance. So let's even start from there. Then there's the misogynists who think that women their work should be in the kitchen. So even if they're in that parliament or they're in important policy meetings, someone is either really not expecting them to talk, let's just say that, to say the least. And so they also have to deal with all those barriers before then they can even come and deal with some of the systemic issues that are happening, like corruption. Because sometimes I imagine if you're voted in and the system is just terrible, one person cannot fix it. But then if we had 50 of them that had the same voice and that wanted to fix it, maybe then we would achieve some change. Yeah, so Stella, you're leaving us with very important things to think about. Over to you, Lillian.
Yeah, just listening to you, I feel like we are at a crossroad. Either things change or get worse. And for me, the most disturbing thing is the level of impunity that we have observed within the last maybe 2 years. Well, particularly with this government. Of course, we've had impunity with, the Kibaki's government, the Uhuru's government. Yeah. But then when it comes now to the rule of law, respect to the rule of law, we are seeing, the level of disrespect we are seeing is coming from all the arms of government. Right. We are seeing a jurispesa where we have some judicial officers that are being bribed to make very, problematic judgments. In the legislature, we are seeing this parliamentarian who are legislating based on their personal interest and not the interest of the people. And sometimes it goes back to I mean, it goes back to the question of whether these people who are in the parliament understand their role as representatives. Because overall, I feel like they are representing certain interests in the executive. And now don't even get me started with the executive wing, because that is where now we are not only seeing disrespect to the court judgment, but also with the decisions that are being made. They are very unilateral. Even where public participation is required, we are not seeing it. And of course, all of us, we've heard about the church that is being built in the State House ground, and it has been confirmed by the executive, and even like the president saying that, I'm using my own money, but whose property are you using? Which decision?
Public property.
Yeah, like there was no public participation towards that we need like a big church in the State House ground. Maybe the reason why the structure was, the church structure was temporarily, is because you're only a tenant in that State House building or in any other lodge. So you cannot make decisions, permanent decisions, while you are there. Because as a president, you're there to serve for at most 2 terms. Yeah. So why are you making permanent decisions? And there are so many other decisions that are being made. You've seen the likes of, the Murkomen as a cabinet secretary, the decisions that they are making, and even how the delivery, the statements that are being made, they are not well thought out, and they end up injuring Kenyans. Yeah. So there are these people who we have donated our powers to. Our constitution is very clear that we can lead directly or through representatives. So with the people. So then with the people, why is it that we feel, isolated? With the people, our powers that we have donated to you as a member of parliament, as a senator, as all that, you are misusing our powers. So then the question is, how do we get back our power? Right. How do you take back this power that every day is being diluted, every day is being taken back, and above all, you're using it to violate us in ways that have never happened before, to kill our children. People are getting raped by goons that are hired by, duty bearers. You're supposed to be protecting us, but then you decide that this power that you have given us, it's ours. So then, I think the challenge then to us is, how do we, like you are saying, how do we sit back, strategize, and find very both constitutional and also I would say, how do we mobilize solidarity with everyone? Because at some point, if they're disrespecting the rule of law, it means then we might have to take this power away from them, using public solidarity. How then do we work towards that very strong public solidarity that has an end that is actually viable? So I think that's what I can say with this situation. And I really hope that as time goes, we're going to think about these solutions and be very strategic in implementing them.
Yeah. And I think something that I keep thinking about is just the carelessness of the leaders that we have. Sometimes I wonder, don't they think about the influence that they have? Because the way some statements are just made carelessly. I mean, we've had Pasaris recently, our president, we've already spoken about Murkomen. And I think even for Murkomen, it's so disappointing because Murkomen was a teacher. He trained so many lawyers. Studied law, trained so many lawyers generally, because he was a lecturer, I think at Moi University. So he challenged so many people to really understand the law, apply the law, and then you go in, and I think it's also just the nature of how people are talking. Sometimes I wonder, is it that you get on the podium and forget? You didn't plan, you didn't discuss with someone, PR, what am I saying? How is this going to be taken? Is this the right thing to say at this point? I really don't think that these are some things that people really think about. And it goes to show that when we talk about leadership, sometimes leadership is innate. I think I don't know whether we've been in conversations where people talk about people born leaders or people can be trained to be leaders. So I think that's for me, it kind of still goes back to, and in fact, I'm continuing to think a lot, even like voting. And I've told myself that I will continue to learn about all the people on the ballot, because I don't want to make a preference, because I don't want to vote for whatever reason or be influenced by anything. I will be researching all those candidates their parties, seeing if they have a manifesto. I know it's a lot of work, but I think I want to be able to do the action. I also, because when I think about the Constitution, it gives us all these powers, and some of the duties that we have actually is we're the ones who put these people in. Although we know that the system can be beaten, I mean, we know there's always the Tarakanitis and the whatevers and anything, and the monkeys and the wires that affect the systems. However, ultimately, it is our duty, it's a responsibility for us to make sure that we are putting the right people in these seats. And that means we have to be doing our research. Even when we talk about collective action, solidarity, it's not just about going to the streets. Sometimes, not everyone can go to the streets. But what are you doing to support the cause? You could be educating other people. Anytime you speak to someone, you make sure you bring these issues up. You could support whatever action is happening in different ways, apart from amplifying. Contribute, whether it's financially, whether it's, something of the sort. I mean, even going to the streets, outside of that fact of people going to the streets, most people that are working probably take a day off so that they can go to those streets. And in some ways, you're sacrificing something work-wise, or your salary of the day to make sure, depending on how you're paid, you're sacrificing something to just be able to do that collective action. So for me, it's a reminder, this conversation continues to remind me that our Constitution allows us to engage in different ways. Our Constitution gives us power. There's so many things that we can do. I mean, and sometimes complaining at an individual level doesn't help. And I think that's why people also say it's always, and they keep saying middle class, although I'm not sure that should be what we should say. Yeah, questionable middle class. But people say that there's just some group of people who really don't care, and they're really not following up on what their responsibilities are and doing what they're supposed to be doing when it comes to democracy and governance and their participation. But sometimes think about capitalism. Honestly, there's someone, if they don't wake up at 4 a.m., they're late for work. Right. And they come back home 8, 9. I mean, you remember all the traffic that we have out there on the roads. This person, maybe they might really want to be present, follow the news, do whatever, but there's so many things that they are trying to do, which then affects maybe how they're showing up. But I think for me, the challenge to all of us is read your Constitution, look at all the different ways you can engage, understand the lawmaking processes. There are so many ways that you can participate. Public participation, you can even send a letter, an email. You really don't even need to go to that public participation meeting, but you can even send an email with a paragraph saying, I do not support this suggested bill or this suggested policy, or, even with public participation, you can say, me where I live, I want the roads to be made because of XYZ. So just a challenge to all of us, in as much as we know that life is happening, there's a lot that we need to sort of do for ourselves as individuals. Not doing something when it comes to your democratic rights, when it comes to your governance, when it comes to who is leading you, only makes your life worse. Because if we don't have the right people coming in, we have people who, let's say, come in and ruin our economy. Guess who will have to work harder to maintain the quality of your life? You who's not bothered. So
yeah. And beyond going to the street and doing something like supporting a candidate, there are so many things that we now have to start thinking about, especially ahead of 2027. How can we organize differently, like you're saying, Lillian? We now have the power of tech, right? We've shown that we can mobilize funds like we did with the Hanifa-led Mchanga process. We can do that. We now have mechanisms that can help us account for the resources that are raised publicly. So it's really a matter of us coming back to the drawing board and asking ourselves, we know that the political class, the political elite is actually organizing. How do we beat it in solidarity with each other? And now is not the time to start pointing fingers at each other and calling people professional activists. We do need even those ones. We need everybody on board, and we need to ask ourselves, what are our strengths and what can we do? What are our weaknesses? How can they get us? And one of the things that I've seen is some of the funded goons that joined the streets with arms, we know that it was one of the ways to counter the movement. And so even as we organize, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we need to have foresight on? What do we need to plan ahead on? But most importantly, how do we mobilize ourselves? And it doesn't just have to be money. It can be our skills, yeah? What can we manage? How can we volunteer in campaigns? How do we join political parties? Which political parties are serving us? Because not all political parties are serving us. Yeah. And what have they done in the past? Have they violated human rights? Then if they have, they definitely cannot promise that they will do better. So we need to join counter political parties that serve us for the better. And one thing that I keep saying is, as women, we must ask our leaders why they seem to hate women so much. Because if you follow Usikimye, every day more than one woman dies. It's either rape or their bodies were mutilated. The other crazy story about somebody's body parts being mutilated and cooked is crazy. And I think this defining moment is for women to start asking ourselves, why are we voting in people who seem not to really care about us? As a bloc, and I know that it's very hard because we have intersecting identities, as women, as girls, we have to ask ourselves, what must we do differently to serve our needs? Because when we marched last year on January 27th, fighting against femicide, I think they actually never listened. Because why do we see what we are seeing? So it's an agenda that every woman needs to start thinking about. And we seem not to be factored in any way. And which brings me to what we're discussing, the reproductive health bill. Again, a women's agenda mostly. I know reproductive health issues also affect men in such a big way, but we do see how a lot of things that have to do with reproductive health mostly affect women in such a negative way. So now more than ever, we have to mobilize as women and have this agenda that is so clear for everybody to know that as women we are watching, and women to fund campaigns, women also mobilize communities and rally behind candidates, and just say, we are no longer rallying behind you because you don't serve us anymore. And if you want our support, these are the things that we need you to do, because we know that we count in what we are doing. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I was actually shocked after the Mandamano that happened last week, when Jerry from Usikimye, you mentioned her, on TV, she mentioned that I think 11 women, I think that people who contacted her, 13 women contacted her organization. And among these 13, 11 had been gang raped, you know? And these are women who, some of them had participated in Mandamano, but others were just coming from work. Capitalism again. Your Mandamano is happening, you have to go to work, and then you have to wait until evening, and where you work, your boss cannot get you an Uber or safe transport to go back home, so the only thing you can afford is a boda. And here you are, you have finished your work day, you're going home, and then some goons who are organized by politicians. And even after, I wondered why, even after Standard reported on that issue, nothing was done. It was like it was reported and life continued, and then it was implemented, and now life has continued. So who is being held accountable for the violations that happened on that day? Who is going to be answerable for those violations? And sexual violation is it takes away a lot of your dignity.
It tears you apart.
It tears you apart. So there are these women, and those cases I've mentioned are only the ones that were mentioned by Usikimye. So there's a lot of women out there who suffered, they're silent right now, and they have been destroyed. And even those who spoke to Usikimye, there are those who are not willing to seek help because they were feeling like, I cannot leave my house. If you ask me to leave my house, I step outside, I'm going to be violated. They're totally traumatized. So then, if we are saying that we are electing leaders, what do they do? What are they saying about protecting women? What are they saying about various policies and bills that are being legislated? And again, you mentioned the reproductive health policy. So, like everything that happens in the country or is being implemented by the government, because again, government should implement all the services, has a guideline. And so we've always had reproductive health policies in Kenya. And currently, the one that is being operationalized is the one that was reviewed was launched in 2022, May 2022. And meaning that there was a previous policy that was reviewed, and no, we're just now, and then the government, through of course the Ministry of Health, came up with a new policy, which is now going to guide us until 2032.
So there's a policy in place.
There is a policy in place. Only that people from the sexual and reproductive health sector are contesting it. They have gone to court, and they have petitioned the court to take this policy back to the drawing board, because it is problematic, and it's problematic in a number of ways. One, there was no adequate public participation during the review of this policy. You can imagine that whenever any policy in any sector is being reviewed, you invite all the stakeholders, you hear them out, there's negotiations, there are buy-ins. But then, again, in reproductive health, it's very contentious, because also there's people who are bringing in their religious biases, their cultural biases. So if you are not involving anyone and you seem to be favoring certain voices over others, and then also the public participation process is very cosmetic, ultimately the document that you get at the end of the day does not reflect what the people wanted. And this document, one of the people who are being affected is the adolescent. You come up with a policy that is, for example, insisting on consent to access services. And this is a blanket clause within the policy. What does that mean? There are things that, imagine being an adolescent, you can remember who you were as an adolescent. There are things that you could not tell your parent to give you consent. And even at that point, you're very vulnerable. So certain violations, you are being violated by your parent, or people who are your guardians, people who are very close to you, and they're the people who are supposed to give you consent. So if there's an element of consent, I think for us, we felt like it needs to be expanded, such that in some instances, the adolescent can make decision, can give their own consent. A parent, a guardian, whoever. For example, if I'm testing for pregnancy, why do I need consent? You understand? If I am testing for maybe like HIV or an STD, why do I need consent? So there are those, and then also there are teenage mothers. I am already a mother. I have given birth. Then
they have the right to choose.
So any policy that is being developed should be aware of these evolving capacities of the young people. So this document, then having that blanket clause, limits access for some of these the adolescents. And even also the language that they're using, it's very problematic, because it somehow seems to be focusing on providing reproductive health services in the context of a family. So what does that mean? So like married couples, even the data that they're quoting seemed like to focus on married people. So what then does that mean for the service provider in their or any other people who are programming for the provision of these services? And the worst part is that we've had very progressive reproductive health policies. Even the one that was being reviewed was progressive. So then when you start seeing rollbacks, it's very concerning. So this petition was filed by two young ladies, Rachel Mwikali and Esther Oko, and also two organizations, including Kelly. And of course, they have their prayers, but the biggest prayer was that this policy be taken back. They stopped the implementation. We use the old one, and then this one is taken back to the review process, so that we can integrate all the voices. Because can you imagine going for public participation? You've not even been sent the document. You don't even have the draft. So the only recommendations you have are based on the previous one, and you want like to have an advanced policy, the next one, that is based on evidence, and also like imagine issues, things that are happening. But instead, it's a draft is being presented on PowerPoint, and then you're being told, what do you say here? What do you say here? And then they've chosen those issues that they think you need to contribute to. So you're not seeing it in a wholesome way. And then they're holding a public policy in Mombasa, where now everyone from Kenya needs to travel to Mombasa for public participation. So if this process are cosmetic, then it means that ultimately what you get are are policies that only represent certain interests. And I mean, right now we know how the anti-rights are becoming very bold. And some of these people who are contributing to these policies have connections to anti-rights and fascist organizations, global ones. So when they come here, they're coming with an agenda, an important agenda that reflects the agenda of their funders. There's a lot of money that is coming in. So it's like if you watched, what is it, this series called? I forget, I'll remember it. But it's like they're taking us to times when a woman needed husband's permission to go and get antenatal services. Because if we are not careful about how these voices are influencing the policies, then we might be taken to times when women's rights were really restricted. You know, when
I'm curious, Lillian.
The Handmaid's Tale, that is
Oh,
the
The
one.
Handmaid's Tale,
Yes, yes.
I'm curious because we seem to be quite a reactive country. We seem not to want to invest in preventive measures of doing things, most of the things really. What are the likely implications of not addressing some of these issues being raised around the reproductive health policy? What are we likely to see in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
So if we continue getting such policies, and a lot of have been passed, even the others which are in the pipeline, we will have like very documents that serve particular interests. Then that means there's going to be discrimination in provision of services. It means that it affects programming and planning. So like where there's supposed to be certain services for adolescents, you're not programming for that because you've decided in your policy that we are promoting abstinence. You know, you've decided that they do not have like cognitive, abilities to make decisions about sex. So if we do not rely on data and evidence to make these policies, then we're going to start seeing gaps. So if you cannot access contraceptives, it means that there's going to be unintended pregnancies. If there's unintended pregnancies, you start seeing cases of unsafe abortions rising. Because again, we understand how our laws on abortion in Kenya are. We have provisions in the constitution, but provision of abortion services in Kenya is restricted. So then, in case you are a victim of not having contraceptives and you feel like I'm not ready, then what does that mean? So it means that you have no choice. So there's a lot of quacks who are providing these services, but then it does not reflect on what the needs of women are. So what I'm saying is that if you have policies that do not address the lived realities of women and girls and anyone else who's trying to access these services, then we are creating a bigger problem. We are going to have issues like unintended pregnancies happening because we do not have measures in the policy to take care of unplanned pregnancies with adolescents and young people. We are not providing antenatal care. We start getting obstetric violence. Young girls, they're very vulnerable. They're getting pregnant. Then they're going to the healthcare facilities. There's no youth-friendly services because the law says, you're not supposed to be. You're not supposed to be having sex. You're not supposed to be getting pregnant. You're not supposed to.
And now I'm already pregnant. Now what do I do?
You're already pregnant.
Yeah.
And you see, we have very progressive adolescent policies, adolescent health policies. We have something called the package of care that addresses how HIV and AIDS services are provided to the adolescent, how like testing happens. Like there's a guidance for the healthcare provider on how to treat adolescent. We also have like a national policy, and I think on adolescent youth-friendly services. Very progressive, evidence-based. They brought very knowledgeable stakeholders to prepare this policy. So then, why does it contrast with the reproductive health policy, the national reproductive health policy? So then that tells you that there are things that needs to be harmonized. And if we do not harmonize them, we are creating a very problematic healthcare sector and environment.
Yeah. And I think for the people that are watching this and are wondering, why is this even something that is important to discuss? One of the things that when we're talking about rights issues and how people generally experience their rights is privilege. And if you're watching this, you have insurance, or even if you don't have insurance, you know that whatever happens, you can afford to go to any clinic, or you have choice, basically, actually. You have choice and you have resources to be able to execute those choices. Then you're lucky because the bulk of Kenya's population is dependent on government services. And also think about, if I did not have that job that affords me good insurance, if I did not have the money to be able to get these services, then you would be the person that would really need to be worried if the government is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And a huge chunk of the population is people that are dependent on those services. Because even when we look at our GDP, when we look at what people are earning, daily wages, actually, that's why when you were having the middle class conversation, you were like, maybe we need to revisit some of those statistics, because not everybody has access to these opportunities, and it is the government's duty to make sure that everyone is experiencing the rights that are in the Constitution and experiencing them well. So that's why this is important, because for those that are privileged enough to be able to take care of these things for themselves, the thing is that day that your privilege is taken away, you will depend on that government. And that's the day that you'll realize, actually, I really should be looking out and understanding what's happening, because why am I suffering and I'm paying tax? Yeah.
And actually, I wanted also to mention that yesterday we were expecting a judgment. Yesterday was the 3rd?
Yeah,
3rd of July.
Yeah.
It's
4th of July.
4th of July.
Yeah.
We were expecting a judgment. The case is under Justice Chacha Mwita. We're expecting a judgment, but it was postponed to the 25th of July. So we need to be on lookout to that judgment, and just to see then, after the outcome, what do we need to do? Just to ensure that we're getting the right policies.
I have to say, we are banking on Justice Mwita.
He's really coming through.
Something just from a social justice perspective, if you've worked in community, then you know how many cases of incest that a lot of children, a lot of teenagers, teen girls, teen boys actually have. And if a lot of times when we went for mentorship sessions before, like they put a cap, like you can't go into schools and talk to school-going kids, we would tell students after just having conversations, if you're not okay asking any question, please write a note, and then we will be able to address it openly with everybody. And we used to receive several cases about I was violated by my relative and I cannot speak out about it. You know, this and this is happening to me and I'm not able to speak about it. What do I do? How can you help me? I find the reason why I find some of the provisions in the policy problematic is because they want, it's like they promote silence, because where do you report? And if you know that you probably are infected, where do you get tested? Because you're a child, you're not able to seek some of these services silently because you have no place to go. You don't know where to articulate. You don't know where to report. Literally, you've been violated and you have to be silent.
And you have to ask for the consent of the people who have probably violated you for you to access services.
Yeah. And one of the best things about Kenya is that we have a very progressive constitution that is actually founded on social justice. And because of that, we must keep pushing for environments and policies and measures that actually continue that. You know, the continuity in our policies in the law is what seems to be a problem in Kenya. You know, on one hand, there's a very same thing to the two-thirds gender rule. You know, one thing the constitution says, and then there's no continuity in terms of making it happen. So yeah, definitely need to talk more about it. I'm not sure this is the last time we're talking about it. We really need to
revisit.
Yeah. I have a question, but you wanted to say something.
No, actually, I was just going to say that and these are things that continue to be most important for us to keep in mind when we come to talk about the sexual reproductive health and rights general angle. Because, for example, with the pulling out of USAID, me, from everything that I have seen online and perhaps being involved in different conversations, our government was hugely dependent on USAID, for example, for provision of ARVs. Although I'm not too sure about the statistics, but just from my reading and from what I have seen, I think even the whole budget when it came to like ARVs was a USAID thing. It was dependent on USAID's donation. And now that USAID has pulled out, it means our government is ideally 100% responsible for making sure that they provide some of these services. It's actually not just with the ARVs, it's also contraceptives, etc. All those things that people used to say you can just go to a government clinic and access. Actually, right now, it might not be that easy if our government does not resource that area of work. So then it's important for us to really be on toes with some of these things, because, for example, with HIV, if the government is not doing its work with the service provision well, we don't want to go back to the 80s. Like, we've already seen that HIV is something that life can really go on as long as there's some things that you comply with. So then we don't find ourselves having another pandemic. We don't find ourselves having more teenagers being pregnant because, I mean, the context is so different, because sometimes when we talk about these things, someone is thinking about that teenager who's raised by two parents, who's in who has access to information, access to support. But there are those teenagers who are there in the village who really, if they do not take care of themselves, the number of things that they are exposed to, and then not to have the services that they need to deal with that potential injustice that they've gone through, that's really a huge violation of their rights. So imagine if it were you, and worst case scenario, you got raped, and then maybe you don't have the information to know how to protect yourself, or you cannot afford to go take P2, or you cannot afford service XYZ. You find yourself pregnant. You don't want that pregnancy. A lot of people are lucky that they have choice and they can execute that choice, but some of these people don't have actually choice, don't have the freedom to do that, don't actually have the information. So privilege is very important when we are talking about rights.
And especially that family thing, because again, the policy seems to be very family oriented. And also, if you dig deeper and you try to look at their definition of family and what they're calling family values, it's basically, imported Christian values. And you see African families are very diverse. Right. So then if you're trying to box everyone into a certain type of family and try to impose certain values on them, what does that mean for the people who do not have that kind of family privilege? Right. What you're talking about. So it's very important that we have a policy or laws that address us in our diversities.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, just like you said, Stella, these are not conversations that we shall... I feel like we could sit here the whole time and really talk about this. Yeah, so I'm already thinking about ideas for future episodes, because there's just so much to unpack. Yeah.
I'm curious. So there's a lot going on, definitely. Yeah. Complexities, violations left, right, and center. And then there's the day-to-day life that we have to beat against time that is, mambo ni mengi, masaa ni machache. Yeah. How are you finding joy in the daily moments that you have? Because at the end of the day, we can't always wallow in sorrow. We have to be sane and remain sane. But with joy, it has to be, we have to live life with abundance. What do you do? What do you do to keep sane? How do you find joy in every moment?
I'm joyful today. That this is happening. Yeah. This is one of my points of joy. But also, we find joy, the day-to-day joy with our families. I'm a mother, so babies, they give you joy. Yeah. And then also just the friendships that we have maintained and retained, because again, that is also a very important element. Just trying to make those spaces where you can just be with people who care about you, who love you, our parents, whoever the family is. Yeah, and being there for others, for each other. I think that is one way of just sharing. When you share pain and you share whatever is happening with each other, I think there is a way that you find joy knowing that you're there for each other and just providing that protection and love even in times of crisis.
Family, community, friends.
True. Okay. Yeah, I think for me it's just trying to remind myself daily that humans were not brought on earth to suffer. Honestly, even if you look at it biblically, honestly, we were not brought on earth to suffer. So these days I'm really trying to be intentional with, can I fix it right now? No. So I'm not going to worry about it right now. Is it taking too much of my time in my head and my peace? If it's yes, then I tell myself I need to drop it. Of course, it's not perfect, but it's also, or easy. But I'm coming to the realization that really, when they say that it's all in the mind, it really is all in the mind. And now I'm trying to use my mind. And of course, all the other things that you've said, knowing that I can call each of you and just laugh for 5 minutes. And, knowing that there's TikTok. TikTok deserves an honorary mention, because TikTok makes me very happy. Actually, TikTok makes me very happy. And the other thing, of course, is just living in hope and remembering that sometimes it's a bad day, or it's a bad period, or it's a bad experience. That doesn't mean that it's a bad life. And even when we come to talk about these things that we're talking about, which sometimes feel like these are huge mountains to climb when it comes to solving them, I remind myself that maybe today there is something that I can do so that the Mwende of 5 years from now is able to vote well. What does that look like? Let me understand XYZ. So just trying to break down things. And lastly, just the belief that joy is always coming. Like there's a song that says joy is coming, and honestly, you know what, that song makes me so happy because it reminds me that it will always be a good time, and good times will always come, no matter the bad times or no matter the anxieties.
Yeah. And for me, it's just reminding myself that it's not for me to fix everything. Yeah, let other people also fix, so that you have time to rest, rejuvenate. And then for me, the best thing that I know really grounds me is, you know, the verse that says, do not be worried, do not be anxious about anything, but just bring your prayers and supplication with thanksgiving. So finding time to say thank you for the little things, even just waking up every day now. You have reminders that waking up, that you woke up and you're safe, and you are not working out and then somebody shot, like the guy who honestly died in a gym. So
with his own
car. So waking up, like you were saying, Lillian, you're blessed. You'd say this moment you're blessed. Waking up is actually a blessing, and being in that moment and saying thank you for the gift of life. Thank you that I am breathing. Thank you that I have community that I can call and you can show up, you know. So those moments, and just knowing that you're not a fixer. You can't fix everything. So move with life, do the best that you can, and the daily acts of resistance then make all the difference. But I do think it's important for everybody to find moments of joy, especially in these hard times. Yeah. All right.
Then, as we conclude the episode, I will hand over first to our guest and then to you, Stella. Then I will finish. But I'd be curious what your parting shots are. Like, from this whole discussion that we've had, what has stood out? I'm just going to leave different prompts and feel free to speak to whatever speaks to you. But what has stood out? What is the one thing that you will do following this conversation? Or generally, what are you feeling like you need to do after this discussion? Because sasa ni kusema na kutenda, si kuongea tu. Unajua mnasemanga podcasters tunaongea sana. No, tutatenda. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think I'll summarize my parting shot by saying that it's good to always remember, for all of us to remember, even in this crisis, even in the various fights and things that we're trying to accomplish, just reminding ourselves that we are enough. That whatever you can offer is actually enough. You don't have to be everything and to everyone. You are enough. So we should feel empowered enough to contribute to whatever efforts that are there. So of course that means that what has stood out for me is that we need to build solidarity and stand for what is right, stand for our rights, even though the forces against these rights are very strong. And for me going forward then, I am going to continue with the fight. I had mentioned that I'm in sexual and reproductive health. We are trying to push for, access to the best services, and also even access to information that gives you autonomy to make choices about, the services that you're acquiring or the products and all that. So I will continue with that fight. But beyond that, I'm in solidarity na Wakenya wenzangu. Sisi, we're called criminals. I'm in solidarity with my digital criminals. I'm in solidarity with my fellow digital and also physical criminals. And I'm going to remain in the fight until, tufike pale mwisho, until we win. Hopefully, that's the dream.
We will revisit this episode.
Yes. I too am in solidarity. And I first want to pronounce myself that I will always be a defender of social justice in one way or another. And so just keeping on with that. And then the other thing that I commit myself to do every day is to build on my community. And that for me means my family, my friends, the different causes that I am part of, and not just expecting people to be there for me because we're in one community, but also being there for them and together finding moments of joy. Rest, like I said, is so important. Good food, good music, including chants of social justice. I think that really feeds the soul. So community is a really key part of my life,
they normally say, what's the point of the revolution if you can't dance? Or something of the sort. And I know that seems very literal, but either way, even in revolutions, there is joy. I mean, Mandamano, when you were watching, those ones, the Bluetooth speakers, the people that were dancing, the ones that were playing that game where they were jumping on the tire. And they were just so happy. I mean, I'm sure they were just so happy until a cop probably just showed up. But anyway, but anyway, that's the point, that even in the points of things being difficult, there is always the brighter side to it. And I think in those instances, the brighter side is hanging out with the people and just the joy that people bring each other as they resist. For me, I don't want to repeat all the things that you've said because they really, really resonate, what you've both said. I think for me, my takeaway and the one thing that I'll continue to encourage myself is I need to continue increasing my awareness on different rights issues. So I can't be a lazy citizen. That is all I will say. All right. And with that, we have come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Lillian, for taking the time to hang out with us. As we said, you're our first guest.
Thanks for having me.
So in as much as for you, it's the first time being a guest on the Journey and Fields podcast. Even for us, it's the first time hosting a guest. And good job to us, Stella. I can say we've fairly done well. And please, when you watch this episode, feel free to leave a comment and just let us know what you think. And we will see you at the next one.
Bye.
Bye.